Something you just said, Dr. Watford, that I thought was really powerful, right? Is the idea of not only being able to express the emotion, but be able to express it to another party, right? And not have it go into a nuclear situation, which is a skill unto itself, right? Of processing your own emotion, not saying something in the heat of the moment, and not going into an even bigger complication or argument. Gary, is that something you see and help the Cloud9 people with? Because I'm really fascinated. We're talking about, obviously, mental health therapy, all this stuff, but for you to be on the Cloud9 team, right, I imagine that's got to be part of it. Because I know how many times I've worked with somebody and gotten mad at them and I shoot my mouth off and it's like, well, eventually we won't work together, but as a team, you've got to not only work together, play together, do all these things together. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think I'll hit that a few different ways.
Please.
So, you know, I think Dr. Wofford's the comments about, is it problematic to be frustrated, irritated, angry? No, I mean, you are. What are you going to say? I'm not, and you are. So really, it's an idea of being really direct, and candid and self-aware, and having the ability to accept that's what I'm at. I think that we talk. To be honest, this ecosystem, this culture is more passive than the one that I've been from in the military, the Marines,
Sure.
and that, right. And passive isn't bad. It just means that I'm kind of concerned about being really direct with you. So I'll be sort of passive or I'll be more aggressive. And I'll, and assertive is in the middle. Just that ability to kind of say, I care about what I think, I care about what you think. And to have that mutual respect for self-awareness for yourself and for the other person is really important. And I think that's a way to say, hey, I care enough about you to be direct, to be candid. And yeah, I care about you, but this, when you do that, that's a foul ball. That's not okay. That type of deal. We can disagree, but at least we're going to talk about it, because I'm not going to, just be passive and then bring it up in some other setting or something. But, we bring up the idea of tilt sometimes, right? And, and being tilt, and I don't know if that's a segue a little bit into this, but I think that tilt is this name of something happens to me, and then I get tilted, and then wasn't my fault. I just got tilted. And like, no, did you know these games are designed to they have such a high ceiling that they're supposed to frustrate you. You're supposed to be irritated. You're supposed, because you can't master them, but you want to master, and there's reward when you get mastery, right? That feels good. So it's frustrating. So what? That's fine. Let's be frustrated, irritated, but let's also realize that something didn't come over me. It's actually, I'm either too focused in the past, so my self-talk, if you will, my awareness is, hey, I'm too worried about that team fight we had that we lost, or I'm too future focused, and I'm always thinking about, oh, this game's over. What does it matter? And so then I don't play in the present. I'm not direct. I'm not clear with myself or with my teammates. And tilt is really this idea of I'm out of control. I mean, I'm not focused in my present. I'm not thinking, now what? Next step. That's what toughness is. That's resilience. That's what directness is all about. So managing your emotions, you can do a lot in learning, even in performance. And that's what I try to, that's sort of the idea of dealing with stigma and dealing with, just try to approach it in a human way versus
Sure.
you're broken. This is a growth model. So, what's interesting is that we talked about some really tough environments with the SEALs, the Marines, the, survival training, being in prisoner of war. I've been there. These guys actually have, they work as hard at their craft as any place I've ever been. They really work hard and they work long. And so it's not so much that I'm just there to deal with all the mental health things, but think about the human. I mean, I am, but think about the human condition too. They work 12 hours a day. We work out at 10, we have meals, we then start scrimming at 12, and we work pretty much through midnight. And if you think about that compounded through COVID, what's a natural conclusion? You're going to get burned out, right?
Yeah.
And it's super, super cognitive expenditure to do this game. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'd be exhausted just playing it all the time. And so if you think about that, you think about all the restrictions on their schedule, we try to say, hey, let's try to find some autonomy. What's some choice? What's some places you can exert yourself and say, this is my time? Or do you have other interests? Do you have connections with somebody else other than the five of us, right? So that's not exactly a mental health problem. That's an obvious thing that's sitting there. And so you want to address those those things. I work with some of them one-to-one, but at that level, they've done a pretty good job to answer your point about, working with arousal control, about working through some of the behavioral and the emotional. It doesn't mean they're paragons of behavior and emotion. It just means that they've done a good job to craft it to their craft. So we focus a lot on think about the team performance and on the comms that you have with each other, and think about the ways that you can be more passive or more direct and grow as a man, or if it's a woman, grow as a woman in this sport. And we think about the way that you work out together, you sleep, you eat, your nutrition, your the way you take care of. So that there's a lot of ways to inject wellness as opposed to a mental health focus, even though you're working on someone who's mentally calibrated and better to approach their life. And so in scrim reviews, we don't just talk about, in hindsight, I should have done that. It's like, no, what were you thinking in real time when you made that decision? What data inputs were you incorporating? Who was calming, who was not? And so you're trying to grow the sense of team, not just performance, but the sense of being better people, being better teammates. And I could go on, but I think that gets to the point a little bit.
We talked about a little bit pre-show about how you've played games and how you were a gamer, an old school gamer. So I'm putting my fist up with you, and how that's kind of informed, the way that you're thinking about, the current game space and how that affects the youth of today in that way too.
This is now how their world is, right? For when I was growing up, I'm going to date myself a little bit because I grew up last century. But when I was growing up, gaming was a thing you did, but there was not this connectedness that we have now. It wasn't necessarily a full culture or a lifestyle. It was like a toy that you played with and you did. What I have seen transition over my lifetime thus far is that gaming has gone from some just kind of entertainment thing to actually a full-on culture and a way of life and lifestyle for a generations now. So what I see with my kids is things that I didn't understand, particularly pre-COVID, now with them being stuck at home and not being able to talk to their friends in real life, and now being on screen 40,000 hours every day. Because as a mom, as a doctor, we're like, no, you can only have so much screen time. You got to. Now I'm realizing we have to really relax those and really take a look at it, because in today's world, cutting screen time means I'm socially isolating my kids. Like I'm pulling them away from their friends, whether those friends live around the corner or live in another country. Those are their friends. Those are their social connections. So I had to sit back and realize, wow, can I allow you to be on games until 12 o'clock and you go to bed at 10? No. But at the same token, I'm much more understanding about this is the way that you guys socialize. This is how you connect. And that's important. You need that. You need that support, especially now. The world is absolutely bonkers. So that's one thing I've definitely realized.
And one last thing, and I'm sorry, this isn't a resource, but it's a comment. And boy, therapy isn't the answer for everything. I hate to say that as a psychologist. I mean, there's the ability to network, the ability to connect, but I would say this: therapy really needs to be seen as a growth model, not a broken model. And the reason you can talk about your emotions and stuff isn't because that's where I'm staying. It's because that's human. That's who I am. And this is where I want to go. And when you have that ability to be self-aware and acknowledge that takes integrity without flinching at yourself, and then do that, that's a monster step to growth, not to being broken, but to move forward. And I think that's really applicable with Cloud9. If that was a question, is really trying to look at things in performance and growth models instead of brokenness. We all find out we're dealing with the same kind of stuff, and you hear that in therapy, you hear that as a psychologist, as a doctor myself, and doing that, I just like, wow, the universality is pretty amazing. Cloud9, they're paid professionals. They're all, that's the fiduciary thing they're responsible for. So that's what they do as professionals. So, but the idea that's brought up is so important, because I think not just gaming is meant to be compelling, because it's meant to have a high ceiling. It's meant to be hard. It's meant to not be easily masterable. And I kind of would love to do that instead of doing things like, to be a man and to grow in this area or to grow in my relationship. That's hard. And sometimes this is more compelling. But I would tell you that you know, just like anything we do to kind of get off the path of growth and learning, it's a real nice short-term thing. I'm not saying it doesn't feel great, but I think we have to really pull that in balance. We can do that with anything. I could be a runner and I want to run all the time, and that's a healthy thing to do. But I may run in a way that is just completely to leave and not feel or not think. We talked about that earlier about being compartmented. I think, Alana, you were talking about that. There's a season for things, but I would just encourage people to really think about, and especially the callers or the crowd, think about it's not terrible to use things as a relief, a stress relief. It's when it becomes a pattern where it really becomes you know, problematic to the other areas of my life. And if we have friends, and if we're, you know, spouses or whoever, or, you know, significant others, and they say, hey, you know, you're neglecting these areas, hopefully we'd have the humility, the beginner's mind, which is really the idea of, I'm curious about my life. I'm not just trying to just, you know, say I know this or that, be an expert. When you have those types of things, then you really honestly can look at things in a balanced way and say the gaming equips me for this, but it doesn't equip me for that. So that's be the best way I could put it.
Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to Gary and Dr. Watford. You guys have been absolutely awesome guests. And to everyone else, we will see you here in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.